Alright, in this video I'm going to do my best to try to quickly explain how to make as much money as you can in New World in generally the fastest ways possible. Now I'm going to go over a couple tips, just kind of starting from the easiest to maybe the riskier or more difficult ones to do. Now the first tip that I basically have is just to find a good farming route. Now it doesn't really matter whatever you want to farm, whatever you're doing, whatever you're crafting. You want to have a good farming route just because it makes it easier and cheaper for you to actually find as much stuff as you can for whatever you're crafting or for whatever you're selling. In this case, I'm trying to find hemp because obviously I just constantly need hemp for crafting things. But hemp is also a rather good money maker. Now the price for hemp has kind of declined as the game has gone on, but hemp is one of those things where you're going to just constantly need it because it is required for pretty much every cloth. So you're always going to need it in some fashion. But I've seen the price pretty much fluctuate anywhere between, like 30 cents per piece to almost $2 per piece. So it really just depends on the status of your server and the basic advancement of everyone's crafting skills. But regardless of the progression, you can still take advantage of these spots. Now, the farm that I'm using right now is right here next to Windsward. Now, this is pretty simple. This is probably pretty actually well known, but if you don't, it's definitely beneficial for you. So the main farming route is what I do is in the red. This is where you're going to find all of your hemp fiber. If you see the little tan line, that's actually great for farming leather. And the one thing that I like to do with my farming spots is to make sure that I have alternate areas to farm things in case, a lot of people are in the same area farming the same thing. So here I can farm a lot of leather, I can farm a lot of hemp, and even there's that little green squiggle, I can farm some broccoli. Broccoli I can see, selling for like 4 to 7 gold depending on where you're going because it is a tier 4 raw cooking material. So it is great for getting your cooking skill going. Now another spot that I farm actually on a regular basis is here around Everfall. So you've got the ones in red, that's my primarily ore-driven farming routes. Now if you look at the one on the far right that's got that loop at the bottom, I also use that to farm some silk thread. You don't necessarily need to do that, you can just stick to the crest there and you'll farm lots of iron. Also to the south of Everfall, there is a lot of hemp fiber as well, so you can farm some thread there. Now the crescent at the top, that's actually a lot of silver and iron ore. So that's a really good farming spot for that. And another one of the great things about Everfall is directly to the north, there's actually a few broccoli farms there. So like I said, 4 to 7 gold for picking up some broccoli. That's not a bad deal. Now another absolutely amazing farming location is to the east of Cutlass Keys, around this little lake here. Now this location supplies a lot of different materials, which is pretty much key to my farming locations. I want to farm as much things as possible, regardless if somebody's trying to farm all of the iron or all of the fiber, whatever it is that they're specifically looking for. I want to have other stuff that I can grab too. So this location has leather, this location has iron, this location has oil, it has honey. There's even a few little bits of fiber and some of the elemental moats around this area. So this is a great spot to farm for. And one of the final locations that I love to farm is actually just southwest of that previous spot, next to Fort Cutlass Keys. Now this one is really good, not only because of the amount of material that is in this area, but because this area is kind of dead. So there's not that many players that actually go to Cutlass Keys. It's kind of a forgotten region, just because it's tucked away all the way in the bottom corner, so not that many players actually go through it. So this means that you're going to actually encounter very little competition for your materials. But here you can find a lot of leather. You can find a lot of hemp, and there's even some silk out here. But there's also some iron. So, it pretty much covers all of the bases. Whatever you need, you can farm it. And there's also a few of those little abandoned towns out here. So if you did want to get, some of those boxes, some of the crates and stuff like that for flux and tannins and whatever, you can do that too. So it's a great farming location just all around. Now, like I said, crates and chests and all that stuff, those are great for farming materials. You can get a ton of different stuff for farming. And the one thing is, if you're not into farming, but you want to make some money, look, these things are littered throughout, mission areas. So whenever you pick up stuff from, the various town boards and stuff like that, you can find a ton of money here. Here I just found 4 void metal. Now look, void metal sells for like 25 to 100 gold, depending on, your location. At least that's what I've seen so far. So I mean, just getting lucky and finding that, 100 to 400 gold just from picking up one trunk. I mean, that's huge, right? But these things sell for a lot of money, especially the flux. Flux can sell for, anywhere from like 2 to 4 gold I've seen. If you look at the sandpaper, you can get, you can get the same price. 2 to 4 gold per sandpaper. So, farming these while you're doing your missions, just picking them up. Because look, you're going to be picking these up a lot of the times for your missions anyway. So having these materials and just selling them on the trade post, if you're not using them, is hugely beneficial for you. But if you are, it's also a great farming route. It's just a great way to gain experience while you're also getting money. So it's just fantastic. Just I can't suggest doing that enough. You're going to make so much money because people constantly need this stuff. And unlike, let's say fiber, where a huge amount of players can farm a large area over and over and over again. So when you pick it up, you definitely have a little bit of a better guarantee that there's going to be a market for it, versus some of these other objects which could potentially crash. Now, the next thing that is quite easy to do is just the idea of buying low and selling high. If you see here, somebody was selling silk for 15 gold. So I just bought it all out. And that's one of the great things you can look for. Just look for somebody that's absolutely selling rock bottom, material, and just buy it all out. Like here we've got somebody that's selling iron ingots for like 2 gold. Now there's a little bit of a hiccup here because I guess whenever I loaded this page, somebody was in the process of buying some, so the actual, quantity didn't match the availability. So I ended up having to, just kind of back that down to the actual amount that was available, the 74. But the principle still stands. If somebody's selling iron for far lower than the market value, buy that stuff up, and you can just easily place it back on the market for, a fairer market value. So you can use their kind of urgency. And they put it up for like 28 days, which is ridiculous. I feel bad for them. But now I can go in and sell it for 336, making almost, 1 gold per piece more than what I just bought it for. And while it's not a lot of gold, it's just easy. Look, I just did it and it took like a minute. So, making 100 gold a minute, that's not too bad. Especially if you just got nothing else to do, just do it, But this kind of idea of buying low, selling high leads us into another area. Look at the tiers of the crafting and the refining. Those are very important. If you've got one city that has like a tier 5 loom or tier 5, arcane, whatever, repository, whatever it's called, they're going to have a lot of specific need for some materials. If this city is also next to like a different city that has like a level 5 smithing or, level 5 armor crafting or whatever, they're going to have different needs. Well, the city with the tier 5 loom is probably going to have a lot of cheap silk. All right, because people are going to go there and craft a bunch of silk, and either they're not going to have a need for it, or they're going to have some leftovers from whatever they're crafting, and they're going to put it for sale. Now, because a lot of people are selling silk, the price is going to be lower. But when you go to a different town, that silk could be a lot more expensive. So if you go to this loom city and buy up a bunch of cheap silk, and then just take your happy butt across the map or just run it to the next city, whatever, I prefer to run through, because then I can actually hit up some farming locations as I'm running through. Or not, maybe they're not the most popular routes, but I'm going to be at least making a little bit of money. That way I'm at least optimizing the amount of money that I'm making while I'm traveling from place to place. But like I said, I bought some silk for a really low price. I ended up crafting some silk while I was there, and I'm going to take it to another city to sell it for even more money. Now in the next city, like I said, if they have, a tier 5 something else, whatever they're making, they're probably selling it for cheaper. So, if I can go somewhere, buy star metal, not maybe really cheap, but for cheaper than the next town, then I can buy their star metal, take it to that town, buy their silk, sell the star metal. Take the silk back, sell the silk, buy more star metal, and, you know, just repeat that. And it doesn't have to be just one simple area. You could do a triangle. You know, maybe one place is selling, you know, some really cheap planks, you know, like weirwood planks, and the other town doesn't even have any, so you could sell it for a lot more money. Or, you know, you can include a place that has like a tier 5 tannery or whatever, you know, for leather crafting. So you could find a place that has, you know, rather cheap leather, buy that, and then take it to a place where there's like a tier 5 blacksmith, because, you know, these iron workers are going to need leather for their armor. So again, you know, you can find these cheap materials and trade them between the cities, and it works pretty well, because a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people just either, you know, craft it and sell it where they're at, or craft it and store it where they're at. So when there's an excess of supply in a certain city, taking it to another city definitely helps you out, because you're going to be making more money than you would in that original place where you made it. Now, like I said, I picked up that silk for like 15 gold, and I crafted it for like, I think like it cost me about 10 gold, somewhere like that, to craft. But I can sell it here in the lowest price, or at least the lowest price right now for the sell orders is 27 gold. So I'm making almost 12 gold more per piece. So again, for basically not doing much of anything, I mean, it takes me about maybe 4 or 5 minutes to run from town to town, I'm making a lot of gold. And of course, the more bag space you have, the more that's for sale, the more research you do into what you can buy cheap in one town and what you can sell for more in another town, I mean, the more money you can make. If you fill up your bag and you just do this over and over again, to, you know, going from town to town to sell this stuff, you can make a ton of gold. Now look, here, because sateen is the highest that they can actually make, the sateen is actually really low priced. So you're looking at, you know, roughly about $5 per sateen. Now, of course, because in the silk town, the highest that they can make is silk, which requires sateen. The sateen price is actually roughly about $8. So what I could do is buy this lower price sateen, because that's the highest they can make here, and then sell it at the silk town, because they're using it all. They're buying up all the sateen to make silk. Again, you know, just look at what they're selling around you. So sateen's the highest they can make here. Silk's the highest they can make in the other one. They need sateen to make silk. Therefore, the sateen in the next town over is going to generally be higher priced. Now, through the powers of video editing, I'm magically back in that first, you know, good silk town. Now, I could end up selling that sateen that I just bought for roughly 8 gold per piece. Now, I could choose to sell it as sateen, but if I actually craft it into silk, I have the potential to make even more money when I take it back. Now, why this is because, look, I bought sateen for 5 gold per piece. So it means that my silk costs 10 gold from the sateen. It costs some silk threads, which you can honestly buy for pennies right now, at least in my server. You know, so it depends. So I can buy silk thread for like, I think like 10 cents per piece. And then plus with the wove, and then with the weave that I need to supply. The weave is like maybe 50 cents. Maybe it's $1, depends on the server, I guess. And the location, probably. Here it would probably be a little bit more expensive because, you know, so many people are using it to make silk. But if I bought it somewhere else, crafted it here, that means I'm basically creating silk that's going to, you know, cost me roughly 11 gold, including auction fees and stuff like that. So I can craft the silk here and then take it back to make now, you know, 26 gold per piece. So 11 to actually make it, 26 to sell it. Easy way to make gold is just, you know, mastering the trade post, right? You want to buy low and sell high. Extremely easy principle. Now, the more risky side of the trade post, and it's not always risky, but it really just depends on how you use it. And that is the buy orders. So when you place a buy order, you're basically telling someone that this is what you're willing to pay. If they want to sell it to you, they can do it. And you can basically get materials for pennies. You know, I've bought gems for pennies because people go out, they farm ore, they have, you know, 1 or 2 of these gems, and they don't really think about it. They just hit the sell button. And I've bought so many flawed gems for like a penny. I've bought so many flawed gems for like 5 cents. I've bought iron ore. I've bought silk thread. I've bought, just regular, I've bought, regular hemp fibers for pennies. And I can easily just sell it back into that auction house, right? I can just sell it back into that trade post and make a boatload of money. Or I can use those materials that I got for extremely cheap to make even more expensive pieces to make even more money. Now, the flaw in this is obviously you have to compete. You have to constantly, check to make sure you're not outbid so that you're actually getting it. Because generally speaking, you're not going to get people who are selling a huge ton at a time. You're going to get people who sell like, little bits here and there. Because obviously, it's kind of like leftovers for them. They're just trying to get rid of it as quickly as they can. They don't really care about, trying to maximize it because they're just selling like, 2 or 3 pieces, or they're selling maybe, like 10 pieces, whatever. Sometimes you may get a whale who just has a whole bunch and they're just like, I just want to get rid of it. But generally speaking, you're going to get people who are just adventuring out in the world. They happen to stumble across them and they just sell whatever they have. So placing a buy order kind of gets it from all those people. So you're getting a lot of different sources, throughout the day. And if you're lucky, if you generally don't have too much competition, you can, fill up your entire order. But again, the risk comes because obviously, you have to put up a lot of your gold up front. So you're putting your gold in this auction house and then you don't have access to it. So you're paying a bunch in like listing fees and you don't have any guarantee that you're actually going to get anything for it. So you kind of got to use a little bit of common sense. What are people actually going to come back with from adventuring? What are people going to have leftovers from when they craft stuff and they just don't need it anymore? What are people just going to get rid of? And those kind of items you can generally pick up pretty easily. And that's generally kind of the way that, you can get a lot of sandpaper or tannins or flux for your various crafting really cheap, because obviously, people don't really think about it. They just pick up that junk and after their missions, they're just trying to get rid of it. You can get a lot of ore or timber or, whatever, because people are just crafting it to level up their stuff, but they don't actually have any interest in selling it. So sometimes they'll just come to the auction house to just unload it for whatever. So you have to look through the various options and kind of see what is going to actually make you money and what's going to, just kind of sit there and just hold your money, not getting you anything. What's going to basically become a listing fee and not actually give you any product. You don't necessarily want to go overboard in the quantity. It may sound good to be like, oh, I'm going to buy like 1 million freaking, linen. I'm good. People are just going to, it's generally not the case. People are not going to sell you 1 million linen. And you're probably going to be outbid eventually. So you kind of want to keep it into some realistic figures here. Maybe you want to only list for like a couple thousand. Maybe you want to only list buying for a couple hundred, because you're probably, going to end up wasting a lot of that in fees. So you don't want to waste the fees because, again, if you list, like buying 100 different items and you have, like hundreds of dollars worth of listing fees, well, you're cutting into your profits. But these are some of the easiest ways that I've seen that you can actually make real money. And I'm not, trying to say that there's not other ways to make money. But look, if you look at some of the more gimmicky ones where, the material is constantly respawning, a lot of those items don't actually sell for what the people are saying they sell for. I've bought weirwood, right? There's a weirwood farm now, but I've bought weirwood for a penny. And I think pretty much on my server, there's no value in weirwood right now. So I bought like thousands of weirwood and turned it into charcoal and then sold the charcoal for like 20 cents a piece. So you can make a ton of money by just buying a cheap product and turning it into something else and selling it back. This does bring up an interesting point though. And this is probably the most riskiest way that you could make money. And this is kind of like the idea of futures. So you're going to buy something based on what it could potentially be in the future. Like I said, most people don't have a need for weirwood. So that wood is almost worthless to 99% of the players right now. But as people are actually crafting with weirwood, as it becomes, more necessary for people on a day-to-day basis, the price of it is, of course, going to go up. Now, the risk here is, you could be holding a lot of material for, very little profit in the future. But, the risk of me buying weirwood for 1 penny and completely filling my stash with it is really low. I mean, it's going to, cost me maybe 1,000 gold to just completely fill it with penny, value weirwood. If there is a time when weirwood goes to like, 25 cents, then I am making an absolute crap ton of money. Now you could look at it for plenty of other materials like star metal ore. You can get that for incredibly cheap, like less than 20 cents in some of the places. And this pretty much just applies to any of those higher level crafting materials. If there is a material that doesn't really have much value because people can't use it or people aren't buying it up, then you can turn that stuff into profit by buying it all while it's cheap. And then once the price eventually catches up with the rest of the population, which could take like a week, so you might have to hold on to this stuff in a different city where you're just not storing anything. Then you could take all this stuff that you bought extremely cheap, bring it out of storage in, like a week or 2 weeks or whatever when the rest of the population catches up, and then sell it when, it's more needed by the player base. But again, that's really a gamble, and that's not necessarily something that will automatically work. It really just depends on how much this stuff is actually farmed while the player base is kind of, behind. It really depends on how ahead of the curve you are. It just really depends, because eventually people are going to need it. But is it going to be as needed as you hope it is? That's just kind of the risk. Use your brain a little bit, buy low, sell high, upgrade cheap materials that you get from the trade post. Just kind of use some common sense when it comes to what you're buying and what you're selling. And if you do it right, you can make thousands of gold extremely easily. And I've got so much gold kind of just tied up into buy orders and in various different products to sell. I've got, I think, like 3 or 4 different towns right now where I've just got stuff sitting there waiting to be sold. So, you can run into a risk of having, too much supply. But again, if you're not using that stash space for anything, having stuff in there, I mean, it's not going to hurt you. And if you're not needing the gold right now, then saving it for when the price could potentially increase, I mean, you could get a huge, huge payday. Imagine buying sand flux for a penny. If you could get the sand flux for a penny and then sell it for 3 gold each, I mean, just think of all that money that you could make. But anyway, those are just some tips and hopefully tricks to help you actually improve how much gold you get. Just, easy way to do it without actually having to spend hours upon hours of farming, 5 to 10 minutes of running back and forth between a city. And you can make a good amount of gold to at least, fund your adventures, buy some new armor or something like that. You don't need to make this like an everyday occurrence. You don't need to just constantly sit there running back to town over and over and over and over again for hours. You can if you want to, but this is just an easy way to do it for people who don't want to spend the time to farm things, right? If you do want to spend time to farm things, then, you can also do that and sell this stuff. So either way, I hope I helped you out with something. I hope I gave you some ideas to how to make some of your own gold. Thank you guys for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.